They rejected him for needing a job, and years later, he got revenge in the most incredible way. Based on true events, Thomas desperately needed a job to support his family, so he walked hopefully to the largest store in Amsterdam. Every step was filled with hope, convinced that this would be his opportunity to change his life. He entered with his heart pounding, without imagining that he would soon feel the weight of humiliation. The manager looked at him with disdain, and without giving him a chance to explain his situation, denied him the opportunity. The words echoed like blows to his heart. "You're not good enough for this position." Thomas felt his world crumbling, while customers watched in silence, letting the injustice unfold before their eyes. His hands trembled, and the air felt heavy around him. Every word from the manager pierced him like an invisible dagger. Thomas had never experienced such humiliating rejection. It was more than a lost job. It was a direct blow to his dignity and self-esteem. He left the store with his head down, trying to hold back tears, but anger began to mix with sadness. Inside him, a silent promise was born. Someday, the story would change, and he would prove his true worth. The humiliation transformed into an internal fire that he couldn't extinguish. That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He relived every word, every gesture from the manager, every indifferent look from the customers. The injustice filled him with rage, but also with determination. He knew he had to find a way to turn that pain into action and not allow life to deny him what he deserved again. He woke up the next day with new clarity. Every idea to open his own business emerged with force. Every plan was a step toward his future revenge. Thomas understood that humiliation could be the engine of his ambition, and that only he had the power to transform that pain into success. As he wrote strategies and dreams in his old notebook, he realized that this rejection wouldn't define his destiny. It was just a chapter, the first of many. And with patience, intelligence, and effort, his story would start to change from that very moment. Thomas began to analyze all the opportunities around him, researching what he could learn from every existing business. His mind worked tirelessly, looking for ways to ensure that no rejection would stop him again. Every observation became knowledge, and every failure of others became a lesson. He sat down to study finance, read about management, and observe how successful businesses operated. His goal wasn't just to learn, but to prepare the ground for the day when he would prove that no one could underestimate him again. The past humiliation transformed into silent strength. Every night, he reviewed what had happened, remembering the manager's contemptuous look. There was no resentment in his thoughts, only clarity. Patience and strategy would be his weapons. He knew that time would play in his favor, and that his opportunity would come when he least expected it. While his friends rested, Thomas continued working on his plans. Every small saving, every smart decision was one step closer to revenge. The frustration of that day didn't paralyze him. On the contrary, it motivated him to build something much bigger than the rejection he suffered. Doubts appeared from time to time, but they never stopped him. Thomas understood that obstacles are inevitable, but true strength lies in how we react to them. The humiliation would be the beginning of a path toward success and justice. His nights were filled with planning and his days with constant observation. Thomas saw opportunities where others only saw limits. The experience of being rejected had made him stronger, more perceptive, and more determined to succeed. With every strategy he wrote and every goal he defined, Thomas felt that the initial humiliation was beginning to transform into something positive. The fire of injustice became momentum, and the idea of one day reversing his destiny became increasingly clear and real. As weeks passed, Thomas began to seek allies and financial advice. Every conversation, every piece of advice, brought him closer to his dream. The store that had rejected him was in his mind as a goal that someday he would reach with firmness and justice. Thomas learned to manage resources, negotiate, and plan investments. Every small success was a step toward his revenge. It wasn't just about money, but about proving that determination and patience always bear fruit. The manager's humiliation had become a silent force that drove him every day. While others settled for what they had, Thomas transformed every rejection into opportunity, every obstacle into teaching. His thoughts were no longer filled with sadness, but with strategies and clear objectives. Every move was calculated, and every action brought Thomas closer to that awaited moment when everything would change. The memory of the initial contempt remained present, but now it filled him with strength. Thomas understood that true revenge isn't about causing harm, but about overcoming and succeeding. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he imagined the day when he would enter as owner of his own business, right where he had been rejected before. The visualization motivated him to continue, to not let frustration defeat him. With patience, intelligence, and constant work, Thomas felt that the first chapter of his story of overcoming was complete. The initial humiliation transformed into the engine of his success, and nothing could stop him. The years of preparation. After the humiliation, Thomas understood that he had to prepare himself like never before. Every day, he invested hours learning about finance, management, and business, while dreaming about the store that rejected him. The initial frustration transformed into silent motivation, pushing him to work tirelessly. Thomas began to observe all the stores in Rotterdam, taking note of how they operated, of every mistake and every success of the managers. Every detail was a learning experience that he stored for the moment when he would have the opportunity to change his destiny. He dedicated himself to studying business strategies, investments, and leadership. Every book read, every piece of advice received, brought him closer to the goal. The initial humiliation now seemed like a constant reminder that he had to be better, stronger, and smarter. His daily routine combined hard work, savings, and planning. Patience became his best ally because he understood that true success requires time and strategy. Every small achievement fed his confidence and determination. Thomas talked with friends and family about his plans, but without revealing all the details. Every step was secret, every advance carefully measured. The revenge wouldn't be hasty, it would be calculated and definitive. At night, he reviewed his progress and adjusted his plans. The vision of returning to the store that humiliated him became increasingly clear in his mind. Every day that passed, he moved closer to transforming pain into triumph. The humiliation became his engine, and patience his secret weapon. Thomas understood that preparation was the key for justice and success to be complete, and nothing would stop him until he achieved it. Over time, Thomas started to save and invest carefully. Every small investment taught him valuable lessons about business and money management, strengthening his confidence. He bought modest businesses and properties in The Hague, learning about management and leadership. Every success increased his security and brought him closer to the final objective, the store that humiliated him years ago. While the manager continued with his routine, Thomas was silently building his future. No one suspected that the rejected young man was weaving a plan that would completely change the story. Every obstacle became a teaching. Every observed failure gave him an advantage over his competitors. Thomas learned to transform difficulties into opportunities and frustration into strategy. His determination didn't diminish, and every day he got closer to the moment to act. Patience combined with intelligence, and his ambition grew silently but steadily. Every night, he reviewed his progress and visualized the moment of revenge. He imagined entering the store, not as an employee, but as someone who finally had control. Thomas's preparation was meticulous and strategic. Every action was designed so that, when the moment came, the victory would be complete and absolute. Finally, the day came when Thomas had enough resources to act. His capital and experience were ready to allow him to fulfill the promise he made to himself that day. He reviewed documents, planned every detail, and made sure everything was perfect. The wait had been worth every second, and his moment of revenge was near. Thomas didn't feel fear. He felt confidence and control. Every year of effort had been preparation for this instant. The initial humiliation had forged an unbreakable spirit. He signed the papers that granted him control of the store. Now the story was changing course, and the young man who was rejected years ago was ready to enter as owner. The emotion was intense, but Thomas maintained his calm. He knew that the most powerful revenge isn't done with anger, but with strategy and tangible success. Looking at the store from outside, he remembered every word and gesture from the manager who humiliated him. He smiled serenely. His patience and preparation were about to bear fruit. With every step he took toward the store's door, Thomas felt that the story was finally on his side. The revenge had begun, and no one could stop it. Thomas entered the store for the first time as owner, feeling how the tension of past years enveloped him. Every memory of the previous humiliation mixed with the excitement of his triumph. The employees and customers looked at him surprised. No one expected to see that young man who had been rejected before now as proprietor. Thomas's gaze was full of serenity and confidence. He went to the manager, who humiliated him years ago. The manager looked at him incredulous, speechless, trying to understand how that man radically changed his destiny. Thomas maintained his calm, remembering that true revenge isn't about humiliating, but about demonstrating success and overcoming. His calm attitude spoke more than any reproach. The store was full of activity, but Thomas felt that time had stopped for an instant. Every step he took toward the manager's desk was a symbol of silent justice. Emotions invaded him: satisfaction, pride, and a sense of justice that he never imagined experiencing. Every look from the manager reflected surprise and certain fear. Thomas understood that the moment had come to close a cycle. The initial humiliation now transformed into inspiration for his future, and the past could no longer affect him. He sat in front of the former manager and firmly explained how he had built his business and how the store that once rejected him was now under his control. The manager couldn't articulate a word. His pride broke before the evidence of Thomas's success. The story that seemed impossible was now tangibly before him. The employees and customers began to murmur, admiring Thomas's strength and determination. Every person present felt they were witnessing something extraordinary. Thomas didn't need to shout or humiliate. His triumph spoke for itself. Patience, strategy, and constant effort had created a silent but forceful victory. He remembered the promise he made to himself that first time he left the store humiliated, to prove his worth and transform his pain into success. That moment had arrived, and he was living it fully. The manager finally lowered his gaze, understanding that he had underestimated someone with true determination. Thomas looked at him with respect, because true revenge wasn't humiliating him, but surpassing him. Upon leaving the office, Thomas felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. The humiliation of the past had been left behind, and the future shone with opportunities and justice. As he walked through the store, Thomas observed every detail with pride. Every employee who looked at him with admiration reinforced his conviction that patience and effort are worth more than any impulsive reaction. He understood that true revenge wasn't in humiliating the manager, but in demonstrating that resilience and perseverance lead to success. Every customer who entered and saw his leadership strengthened his self-esteem. Thomas felt that his victory was complete, and he didn't need public recognition to know it. The emotions of years mixed with gratitude. Every challenge, every observed failure, every humiliation received had become valuable lessons. Thomas breathed deeply, enjoying the moment without haste. He had proven that patience and silent strategy can transform any adversity into triumph. While planning the store's future, Thomas knew that nothing would stop him again. Every step from the past had prepared him for this instant of personal justice. The initial humiliation no longer existed. Only victory and the satisfaction of having changed his destiny with effort and determination remained. The teaching and inspiration. After success, Thomas decided to share his story with young entrepreneurs in Utrecht, showing that rejections and humiliations can become motivation. Every person who listened to his story understood that patience, effort, and strategy are more powerful than anger or immediate revenge. Thomas recounted how he transformed humiliation into momentum to learn, save, and build his own path to success. He explained that every mistake observed in other businesses was a lesson, and every rejection an opportunity to improve. The young people took notes, inspired by the strength and determination that Thomas had demonstrated over the years. Thomas emphasized that true victory lies in surpassing oneself and not allowing rejections to define our destiny. His story became an example of resilience, teaching that life rewards those who work with patience, intelligence, and vision. In every talk, Thomas recounted in detail how he transformed frustration and humiliation into motivation to study, invest, and plan his business. The listeners understood that his success wasn't by chance, but the result of years of silent and constant effort. Thomas explained how every decision was thought out so that the final result would be inevitable, justice, and personal triumph. The young people were inspired seeing that someone who was rejected could take complete control of his life and turn adversity into victory. Thomas emphasized that self-respect and patience are more powerful tools than any direct revenge. Every story of others' failures that he observed transformed into learning to not repeat the same mistakes. The final lesson was clear. Life gives opportunities to those who wait, plan, and act intelligently. Thomas continued sharing his knowledge and strategies, showing how planning and perseverance overcome impulsiveness. Every entrepreneur who listened to him felt they could apply his example in their own life, understanding that rejections aren't final. Thomas remembered the initial humiliation and how that pain had transformed into strength to build something lasting and successful. Every account reinforced the idea that obstacles are inevitable, but the attitude toward them defines our destiny. Thomas's story became inspiring, motivating those who felt defeated not to give up. His message came through clearly. Patience, preparation, and resilience are the key to any true success. Thomas concluded every talk with the certainty that personal justice and triumph come from perseverance and determination. The legacy. Years later, Thomas became a respected businessman, and the store that rejected him became a symbol of his perseverance. Every customer and employee who remembered his story admired him, inspired by his resilience and determination. Thomas understood that true victory wasn't just material, but emotional, overcoming pain and transforming it into motivation. The story of his initial humiliation became an example of how patience and effort overcome any obstacle. Thomas looked at his past with gratitude, understanding that every rejection had led him to be stronger and wiser. His decisions and achievements showed that success isn't luck, but the result of discipline, strategy, and vision. The store that humiliated him was now tangible proof that resilience can change any destiny. Thomas decided to share his story publicly, teaching that rejections and humiliations can be transformed into opportunities. His account inspired thousands, showing that patience and silent preparation are more powerful weapons than anger. Every person who heard his story felt they could apply those teachings in their own life. Thomas emphasized that self-respect, strategy, and perseverance are the foundation of true success. Young generations saw in him an example of how to turn adversity into triumph. Every word from Thomas reminded that challenges are inevitable, but how we face them defines our destiny. The final lesson was clear. Life rewards those who work with patience, determination, and clear vision. Thomas never forgot the initial humiliation, but now he saw it as the engine of all his success. Every achievement was a reminder that patience and silent strategy can overcome any obstacle. Those who previously underestimated him now admired him, and he looked at them with serenity, without resentment. His story became inspiration for entrepreneurs and dreamers, showing that resilience transforms destinies. Thomas understood that power wasn't in direct revenge, but in building his success and maintaining his integrity. Every day that passed, he shared his teachings and motivated others not to give up in the face of rejection or humiliation. And as he looked at the store that once rejected him, Thomas smiled, knowing he had written a triumphant ending that would change his life forever. If this moving story touched your heart, leave your comment about what you would do in Thomas's place and subscribe to continue receiving real stories like this.